Good morning. Welcome to the Kids Report for the 16th day in the 6th month in the 16th year of Chungi. A lot of sixes. And this is Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Kyungji Moon. Let's do our usual walk around the kingdom. And right now in Cheongpyeong, Tennessee, I have 69 degrees and sunny. Getting up to 84 today, intervals of clouds and sun with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. Humid, and then 66 for a low tonight, the evening thunderstorm in 1 or 2 spots, otherwise mainly clear and, yes, you got it, humid. And then in father's hometown, Cheongju, North Gyeongan province, in Korea, currently mostly sunny and 90 degrees, cloudy and 69 tonight. Tomorrow, sun and areas of high clouds and very warm, high of 90 degrees again. And then at the Tunagoon Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, currently 68 degrees and cloudy. Today, getting up to 86, mostly cloudy and humid, with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And 67 tonight for a low, partly cloudy and humid. At the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground, currently 70 degrees, getting up to 94 today. And tonight, clear and humid, 74. At the Suncheon Palace in South Korea, we currently have 80, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, yes, 82 and partly cloudy, getting down to 76 tonight. Tomorrow, sunshine and very hot. 98 for a high tomorrow. And at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, currently 75 and light rain falling. That's going to continue for at least an hour. And tonight, getting down to 72, 76 for a high tomorrow, a couple of showers in the morning, otherwise low clouds. At the Ilan, Taiwan, currently 80 degrees and overcast, 74 for a low tonight, a thunderstorm around this evening. Tomorrow, 90 degrees, clouds followed by a brightening sky. All right. And then let's go to Father's Word, and we're in the book on true love, chapter 2, section 4. This is on love of husband and wife. Okay. So, and the 4.1, the subheading is love between husband and wife is the flower of all the universe. Yes. Well, it says that man is an existence who carries God's 양성적 형상, his yang type 형상, and woman is an existence that carries God's yin type 형상, and so the husband and wife together are like the when you have husband and wife together, it's like you have all the universe in one wrapping. So that is why husband and wife are able to feel the ideal love of God's 심정, and feel the ideal love of God's 심정. Praise God. Wonderful. Yes, husband and wife, very wonderful. I'm sorry, a little bit dark today. I haven't quite got all my setup here after I came back. The last 12 days, I've been in the mountains in Korea. About an hour out of Seoul, I guess, about an hour from Seoul. And I was at the home of a Blessed Central family, and I was there with the third king, Shinjun, and also with Reverend Yu Jong-ho, who we know for his lectures in OSTP. And there, the last 12 days, the third king was receiving a one-on-one workshop with OSTP workshop, a one-on-one OSTP workshop with the Reverend Yu. And so I was there to help out with an occasional sort of I wasn't really translating, but there were, once in a while I'd come across a word that the third king might not be familiar with, and so I was there to help out in that respect. So I'm back at my house today, but for the past 12 days, there were, we had 3 hours of lectures in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and Reverend Yu's health is not good. And that was all that he was able to do. We tried to do more in the beginning, and his health would not sustain that. And so it turned out that we would do 3 and 3, and it worked out quite well. And of course, the third king was able to ask all the questions that he wanted. And so it was really a fantastic experience for everyone there. Anyway, so That's wonderful. He now has new information and uh, new information that he can use perhaps in the future in his videos on apologetics and on perhaps the principal presentations. Okay. All right, so back to the normal grind, and here we are today. Grind is not a good word for it, but anyway, here we are today. Okay, let's see. Where shall we begin? Yeah, let's begin with this one. FBI investigating Brennan and Comey's handling of Trump-Russia probe. Yeah, it's about time. Do you think they'll actually put Brennan in jail? They certainly should, but I don't know. I wouldn't hold out too much hope. The FBI has launched criminal probes into, these are very powerful people, very powerful. They have all sorts of connections. The FBI has launched criminal probes into former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey. We do not comment on ongoing investigations, the Justice Department spokesman told Newsmax in response to an inquiry about the criminal investigations into Brennan and Comey. The probes are looking into alleged wrongdoing related to past government investigations about claims of Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. elections, in which President Donald Trump defeated former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, according to initial reports. The Washington Times, citing unidentified sources, also confirmed existence of the probe. CIA Director John Ratcliffe sent evidence of possible wrongdoing by Brennan to FBI Director Patel to investigate for potential prosecution. Well, yeah, let's see. Well, let's see where they go with this. Brennan and Comey are disgraceful individuals who turned against our Constitution and our country, and I'm sure they did, in fact, lie to Congress. It's up to the Department of Justice to investigate that and to prosecute them if they did, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said in a televised interview Tuesday night. The Department of Justice has told Newsmax that it cannot confirm or deny the existence of any potential investigation. The scope of the criminal investigations into Brennan and Comey was unclear. A criminal investigation does not necessarily result in charges. Initial reports cited Justice Department sources, but did not specify the number of sources. A CIA review released last week found violations of intelligence tradecraft standards in the production of a U.S. intelligence assessment that Russian President Vladimir Putin sought to sway the 26th presidential vote to Trump. Okay. And Reuters, I guess, had something to do with this report. So we'll see. We'll have to, this is one of those things we just have to wait and see. You know, it's nice to read today, and it's a nice way to begin the King's Report, but let's not hold our breath. Okay. All right. And let's see, speaking of that type of thing, we have another theory on what happened to the Epstein files. And that is that the Biden administration destroyed those files before Trump could get his hands on them. Okay, that sounds like a pretty good theory also. As you know, what was it? The day before yesterday, I think I was saying that maybe Mossad or whatever other intelligence organization Epstein was working with, maybe got to the files at a very early stage of this whole situation and did not destroy them, but probably took them with them for future reference, I guess. Anyway, this congressman, a Republican from Tennessee, Tim Burchett, believes the Jeffrey Epstein files no longer exist and could have been destroyed by someone. He went so far as to accuse the Biden administration of destroying the files. Burchett, who predicted Americans would never learn the truth about the convicted sex offender, joined on balance to discuss his thoughts on the Department of Justice and FBI's findings that there's no client list to be disclosed and that Epstein died by suicide. I think the files existed at one time, Burchett said. I think they were destroyed in the previous administration, and I think if they'd ever had anything on Trump, it would have been out at day one under the Biden administration. That sounds like a good possibility, good reasoning. Burchett echoed speculation that very prominent people, including Hollywood elites and world leaders, were on the, quote, client list, unquote. Would it have caused economic disruptions around the globe? Maybe, but I don't really care. I want to bury those dirt bags. Burchett reiterated that he believes the Biden administration destroyed everything of note regarding Epstein and argues Attorney General Pam Bondi is not saying so because she has no proof. I think she got out over her skis. I think they all got a little excited, and I don't think they exist anymore. Yeah. Okay, so this is, I think, a good theory there. But as I was mentioning, there is a copy of that file in Spirit World. Okay. You can't exist the one that exists that's in Spirit World. And sure that the people who are on that list will be held to account in Spirit World. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. In fact, they may wish that they had had the opportunity to be held to account here in the physical world once they see what's waiting for them in the spirit world. But we live in a just universe. We live in a just universe, you know what? And everybody takes responsibility one way or another for what they've done. Okay. All right, let's see then. And then let's go to this one here. 9 Chinese nationals arrested, charged, or pleaded guilty in one day for U.S. national security crimes. Okay. In one day, 9 Chinese nationals were arrested, charged, or pleaded guilty in cases tied to U.S. national security. One of them, a Chinese hacker caught in Italy, is accused of stealing critical U.S. COVID-19 research during the pandemic. Was his last name Fauci? I don't know. Fauci sounds like a Chinese name. I don't know. We have the details in the investigation. Okay, great. This is actually, I think, a transcript of this video. Steve Yates, Senior Fellow of National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation, said it sort of reinforces the idea that this was an operation. The Chinese Communist Party was not only poisoning the world, particularly the US, but also monitoring how we would react and the health impacts on the target. A Chinese student with military research background is pleading guilty to visa fraud. He had key details about his education to get around US visa restrictions. Europe is facing a rise in Chinese covert operations. Ukraine authorities arrested 2 Chinese men accused of trying to transfer classified missile system documents to Beijing. The United States is moving to block foreign adversaries, especially China, from buying American farmland. It's about protecting both the food supply and national security, officials said. All right, so that's that. Yes. So the struggle against the CCP goes on, and we thank those who are doing the work to bring these people to justice. Okay. Let's before we go to the copper story, let me go to let me do this farmland thing a little more. China came out against what the U.S. is doing in terms of restricting the Chinese purchase of farmland. And, you know, this is going to be a little bit dicey because on the one hand, it's hard to and probably should not restrict what is it? Individual, I'm sorry, here I'm doing with all these pop-ups all of a sudden. Individual economic activity. Okay, but you also want to keep the CCP away from U.S. military bases and so forth. So let's take here. China warned the Trump administration that the move to ban it and other foreign adversaries from purchasing farmland in the U.S. will only backfire. The United States overstretched the concept of national security in restraining other countries and entities' rights to purchase land. Okay, well then, can we purchase your land? No, because no one can purchase land in China. The government owns all the land. it can only lease the land in China for 50 years, 75 years, 100 years, etc. And the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, this lady Mao Ning, said the ban, part of the 7-point National Farm Security Action Plan, unveiled by U.S. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins on Tuesday, is against international trade rules. We urge the United States to stop politicizing economic and trade affairs, Mao said. So yes, but what about your land? Okay. Foreign ownership of American farmland, particularly by Chinese individuals and firms, has come under increasing scrutiny over the past couple of years. U.S. Department of Agriculture data shows that foreign persons held an interest in nearly 45 million acres of American agricultural land at the end of 2023, accounting for 2% of all land in the country and 3.5% of all privately held agricultural land. Chinese ownership of U.S. farmland is limited in scale. Chinese primary investor filers reported owning 277,336 acres of agricultural land. USDA data up to December 31, 2023 showed a tiny fraction of the total. Okay. But it is seen as a grave national security threat to the U.S., particularly as the great power competition with China heats up over issues including trade, territorial disputes in the Indo-Pacific, artificial intelligence, Taiwanese sovereignty, Russia's war in Ukraine, and more. There's more. The USDA noted a recent scheme involving foreign nationals, including a Chinese Communist Party member, who are accused by federal prosecutors of smuggling a noxious fungus into the U.S. via a research lab in the country. Okay, that was in Detroit, right? In its release, the USDA said the scheme highlighted a disturbing trend. America's enemies are playing the long game, infiltrating our research, buying up our farmland, stealing our technology, and launching cyber attacks on our food systems. These actions expose strategic vulnerabilities in America's food and agricultural supply chain, the USDA release said. Rollins said in a statement outlining the new national security plan for agriculture that we'll never let foreign adversaries control our land, our labs, or our livelihoods. Her department's plan includes tackling ownership by foreign adversaries, investing in domestic supply chain, and working with non-adversarial foreign partners to fill gaps and taking on foreign criminal gangs who defraud food assistance programs. It also has measures to prioritize domestic agriculture and USDA investments into research and securing it against infiltration by foreign adversaries, as well as evaluating all USDA programs to ensure they meet Trump's America First agenda. Moreover, the plan will focus on strengthening biosecurity to protect plant and animal health and protecting critical infrastructure against cybersecurity threats. Okay. And China doesn't like it that they're being banned from purchasing U.S. land anymore, anyway. Well, so we're happy that China is not happy with this, and we'll pray that China can be held to account for everything that they've done to the U.S. food supply. And Mrs. Fox, Trump administration moves decisively to block China for weaponizing American farmland. But, what about Bill Gates? Of course, okay, he's not Chinese, but talk about weaponizing farmland. I think maybe Bill Gates may be about to do something on that order as well. Okay. U.S. bans China from buying farmland. All right, so. Well, then we can go to China and say, okay, we'll let you buy our farmland if you will let us buy your land. How about that? Yeah. We can trade. Okay, let's go to the copper story. And this is an interesting story because people who study tariffs or tariff policy see that normally what you want to do, right? Normally what you want to do is that you want to have raw materials coming into your country at the cheapest possible price, because then you can take those raw materials and you can produce stuff and then export those raw materials at a much higher price, right? Value added. And so it's kind of rare for a country to put tariffs on a raw material that's coming into the country. That just raises the price of everything that raw material goes into. And copper, it turns out, is one of the most widely used metals. And so putting a tariff on copper would seem to be a pretty good way of raising prices overall. That's what they say. That's what they say. So here, but President Trump's argument is that, well, we need to encourage the production of copper domestically. And since U.S. producers cannot produce the copper at a price as low as, as they cannot produce it as cheaply as foreign competitors, so let's put a tariff on those foreign competitors so as to give U.S. copper producers more room to operate. Except that, you can't just increase production domestically overnight. It's not a matter of taking a shovel out into the backyard and you start digging up copper all of a sudden. No, it takes years to get that kind of production going. And the domestic producers will say, well, okay, we could invest a lot of money into producing more copper, but how do we know that these tariffs are actually going to last for a number of years? What happens if we invest a lot of money into increasing domestic copper production, and then, the next president, or even maybe President Trump, one day decides, never mind, and then cancels those tariffs, and then where will we be, right? We will have invested a whole lot of money into a production operation that is not internationally competitive without tariffs on foreign copper coming into the United States. And so they may not be so ready to invest into that kind of production. So it's a little bit complicated, and we'll have to see how this plays out. Let's take a look at this story. Okay. So Trump says 50%. Well, let me share this with you. Trump says 50% tariff on copper imports will begin August 1. And the decision was made after he received a national security assessment. Copper prices rose to 2.62% following Trump's latest announcement. And shall we take a look at, is that where it is now, or is it going up more? But just let me, just curious. Let me see if I can bring this up quickly. Copper. Let's see here, coins. Copper, okay, well, 2.43% up right now. Okay, all right. So roughly the same where it was. Okay. U.S. imports nearly half of the copper it uses. And oh, by the way, Canada is one of the countries that exports copper to the United States. So it turns out that our producers are not able to compete with Canada, seems, without a tariff. U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday that the 50% tariff on copper imports, which he had announced the previous day, will take effect on August 1. The decision was made after he received a national security assessment, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. I'm announcing a 50% tariff on copper effective August 1, 2025, after receiving a robust national security assessment, Trump wrote. Copper is necessary for semiconductors, aircraft, ships, ammunition, data centers, lithium-ion batteries, radar systems, missile defense systems, and even hypersonic weapons, of which we are building many. Copper is the second most used material by the Defense Department. Copper prices rose to 2.62% following Trump's latest announcement, extending its gains from previous session when it jumped to 13.12% and recorded its best one-day gain since 1989. Let's look at the graph here. Oh, yeah. Okay. 5-year price. Yeah, okay, so it's the highest in at least 5 years, at least 10 years. It's not, the price is now the highest it's been in at least 10 years. Okay. Meanwhile, okay, so well, since 1989, so that would be what, 36 years. Meanwhile, the 30-month benchmark copper futures, we don't want that. U.S. consumers could be paying around $15,000 per metric ton for copper, while the rest of the world pays around $10,000 by August. Right. Copper is the third most consumed metal globally and behind iron and aluminum. The U.S. imports nearly half of the copper it uses, with most of it coming from Chile, according to the data from the U.S. Geological Survey. So I predict that Mexican cartels are going to be, maybe Mexican cartels will be smuggling copper into the United States if they're with this $5,000 differential. What do you think? Earlier on Tuesday, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told CNBC's Power Lunch that the Trump administration wants to bring copper production home. He noted that Trump's move will bring copper tariffs in line with U.S. duties on imports of steel and aluminum, which Trump doubled to 50% in early June. So that's, especially aluminum is another example of a raw material that is now being tariffed. However, experts say this will take a while. It will take a while before production ramps up, and possibly decades to fulfill demand. The U.S. reliance on copper imports is a vulnerability, but the U.S. doesn't have the capacity right now to offset imports. Carlos Miguel Gutierrez, who served under President George W. Bush as Secretary of Commerce, told CNBC's Emily Tan on the China connection. Perhaps capacity will be online in 2027 and 2028, assuming that there's a guarantee that those tariffs will stay in place. How are you going to guarantee that? Meanwhile, there will be some shortage of copper in the U.S. and price increases as companies start to invest in production capacity. Sectoral tariffs such as copper, steel, aluminum, and pharmaceuticals may be used to leverage as leverage in country negotiations, he added, noting that Canada is also a significant exporter of copper to the U.S. So they're going to be smuggling copper across the Canadian border, I bet. Adam Whitley of a BNY Investment said on CNBC's Squawk Box that Trump's latest announcement is indicative of the trade policy that he wants to protect. Copper is probably in a third category of tariffs, which is national security. So we've got negotiating tactics, we've got addressing trade imbalances, and then the copper, or indeed any of the materials, maybe semiconductors, maybe pharmaceuticals, what they said. So pharmaceuticals coming into the U.S. being tariffed. Well, I know, as we've talked about before, Americans are paying a lot more for pharmaceuticals than other countries anyway. Now, let's see how this works out. British multinational research firm BMI expects global copper mine production to increase at an average of around 2.9% from 2025 to 2034, with annual output rising from 23.8 metric tons in 2025 to 30.9 million metric tons by 2034. For this year, the firm's analysts expect global copper mine output to rise by 2.5% year over year in 2025, supported by recovering production in Chile and the ongoing ramp up at this mine in Mongolia. Peru, Russia, and Zambia are also expected to be among the major contributors to the rise in global output, the analyst wrote in a July 9 note. So putting tariffs on raw materials. Doesn't sound like such a good idea, but let's see what happens. Okay, and let's now see what else is happening today. Let's go to Newsmax and look at some of the headlines there. White House blames Dems for spike in assaults against ICE agents. Stay closer to you. It's too warm here. Sorry for the silence. I'll be right with you. Okay, against ICE agents, yeah. People who work for ICE are really risking their lives. And as it says here, the White House says that ICE agents risk their lives to secure our borders and protect our communities. They're facing a 700% surge in assaults, a direct consequence of dangerous inflammatory rhetoric from Democratic politicians, the White House said in a document. Let's watch closely how this plays out. I think actually President Trump's Rasmussen polling is actually down recently. Is back down below 50% on the overall approval. So he's 49 to 49. And then the strongly approve is 34 and strong disapprove 41. So there is a drop in the support for President Trump. You have to wonder why that would be. It seems to me that he's doing an excellent job, but people don't seem to see it that way. Some people. And here, Carrie Lake says, "I'm asking ICE agents risks death for officers." And it's only going to take one such incident now, and things are going to get a lot worse. Ex-Homeland Security advisor on peril to ICE. And let's take a look at this. He says the left doesn't care about endangering ICE. That's right, because they're in the process of executing a revolution. And revolution needs blood. And so I think they certainly don't care. In fact, they want an incident like this to happen. Let's see, we're stuck right now. Let me go ahead and try and erase this. Oh, I can't. We have to wait for the computer to catch up here. Okay, well, oh no, I'm frozen all over. Tech team, can you still hear me? Maybe the tech team is not hearing me either. Okay. Oh boy, I clicked on the wrong link there. The screen seems fine. Well, it's not because I can't do anything. Nothing happens on anything. So let me do this. Let me see if I can unfreeze it. Nothing's working. Okay. Nothing is working. All right, so we were talking about the danger. All right, so let me move then. You continue to look at my frozen screen, and I will go to my cell phone. and see if I can continue this way. Okay, let's go to those next. Okay. Oh, there we go. Finally caught up. Okay. All right. Yeah, we're back. We're back. The screen is back. Okay. And Trump, White House resumes sending some weapons to Ukraine. We talked about that. He says defensive. He says he got it. But, how is he going to bring peace to Ukraine if he's continuing to feed the war there? Senate confirms the Republican CEO to lift a 50% tariff on Brazil. And the fight with Jerome Powell continues, and he does not like. So on Wednesday, the minutes from the most recent FOMC meeting, the Federal Open Market Committee meeting, were released, and President Trump does not like what he reads there. President Donald Trump on Wednesday again slammed Federal Chair Jerome Powell, saying on Truth Social, too late, as he nicknamed him, as costing the U.S. $360 billion a point. That would be a percentage point of interest per year in refinancing costs. No inflation, companies pouring into America, the hottest country in the world. Lower the rate, anybody but too late. Trump on Tuesday called on Powell to resign immediately and said it's okay with me if Congress investigates the chairman over claims he lied about a $2.5 billion upgrade to the central bank's headquarters. The president made those comments during a cabinet meeting when he was asked by a reporter whether Powell should step down if he misled Congress. Well, then he should resign immediately. He should get somebody in there that's going to lower interest rates. Trump, we should get someone in there. Trump replied, it's okay with me. I think it's terrible. I think, look, we're paying, I call him too late, too late, TOO too late, like too tall Jones for the Dallas Cowboys. Too late, Trump said. He's always late, but he wasn't late with Biden before the election. He was cutting them like crazy. That's right. That's right. He was trying his best to help Biden. It didn't help too much, did it? But he was cutting them like crazy before the election with Kamala Harris and Biden. He was trying to get them in, I guess. I don't know. He was recommended by somebody who worked for me, the president added. President Trump finally looked back into his diary and realized that he actually appointed Powell during his first administration. He was reappointed by Biden. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director William Pulte last month demanded a full inquiry into Powell following his testimony to the Senate Banking Committee last month. The price tag for the overhaul to the Fed's office has already ballooned by 30% from an original estimate of $1.9 billion. So they need a new building. They need some new offices with new carpet and all that, new computers, I guess. But he does not want to lower the interest rates. And yeah, so this is interesting that President Trump says he may seize control of New York City if the Muslim communist Mamdani is elected. That's interesting. That would be interesting indeed. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that he might seize control of New York City if Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani wins the mayoral race. If a communist gets elected to run New York, it can never be the same, Trump told the New York Post during a cabinet meeting. But we have tremendous power at the White House to run places where we have to. New York City will run properly, he said. I'm going to bring New York City back, New York back. I love New York. Yeah, he is a New York boy, isn't he? We're going to straighten out. We're going to straighten out New York, the president added. We're going to have to straighten it out from Washington. Trump told the outlet that his administration is going to do something for New York, but did not elaborate further. I can't tell you what yet, but we're going to make New York great again, he said. And also, we're going to make it greater again with the country. Before dining with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington on Monday night, Trump told reporters that Mamdani will believe if voters sent him to City Hall in November, will behave, I'm sorry. Mamdani will behave if voters sent him to City Hall in November. It all comes through the White House, Trump said. He needs the money through the White House. He needs a lot. He's going to behave. He'll behave. He better behave. Otherwise, he's going to have big problems. The president added that Mamdani has been promoting a philosophy that this country is not ready for, and it never will be. This is a communist. He's not a socialist. He's a communist, Trump said. And he said some really bad things about Jewish people, and he said some really bad things about a lot of people. During Tuesday's cabinet meeting, Trump also floated the idea of taking over the management of Washington, D.C. We're thinking about doing it. To be honest with you, he said, we want a capital that's run flawlessly. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles has been in regular contact with D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, according to the president. We've had a good relationship with the mayor, and we're testing it to see if it works, he said. The Washington, D.C. actually did not have its own government until sometime, I think, in the 70s, 1970s. Until then, Washington, D.C. was run by one of the committees or subcommittees in the House of Representatives, essentially. And the chairman of that subcommittee was effectively the mayor of Washington, D.C. I believe that's the way it worked. And Washington, D.C. was allowed to begin electing its own mayor in the 1970s. And I don't know about city council. Did they have a city council before that? I'm not sure. But anyway, I know that the mayor, the mayoral system in Washington, D.C. is relatively recent, relatively. So it's only about 50 years old. And, well, if you've been to Washington, D.C., you know that there are sections of Washington. I'm sorry, I have some kind of allergy going on here with my eyes. You know that some parts of Washington, D.C. are quite nice, but there are other parts that are really quite terrible. Of course, these days, what major city is not, right? Washington, D.C. is actually not a major city in terms of population or size. It's a major city, of course, in terms of its the fact that it's the seat of the U.S. government. But it's a relatively small city. Its population, I think, is less than 1 million. It used to be about 600, 700,000. They may have increased it more since then, but it used to be quite. So it actually is the cities around Washington, D.C., such as, well, Fairfax County and also Montgomery County, and these places around Washington, D.C. that have all the population, well, not all of them. So also, but also affecting this is going to be the fact that the Supreme Court is now going to allow, or it has allowed, President Trump to downsize the federal government. So that decision was made yesterday as well, right? Here's the AP story on that. Don't often use AP stories because they become so leftist, but let's go ahead and give them a chance on this one. Supreme Court clears the way for Trump's plans to downsize the federal workforce. Supreme Court on Tuesday cleared the way for President Donald Trump's plans to downsize the federal workforce, despite warnings that critical government services will be lost and hundreds of thousands of federal employees will be out of their jobs. So there you go. Mark Sherman in the typical AB style here, AP style. The justices overrode lower court orders that temporarily froze the cuts, which have been led by the Department of Government Efficiency. So perhaps now, finally, the Department of Education can be shut down, or at least destaffed and defunded or destaffed, right? I think actually getting rid of it is going to take an act of Congress because it was put into existence by an act of Congress, but at least it can be severely downsized. So that would be the beginning. The court said in an unsigned order that no specific cuts were in front of the justices, only an executive order issued by Trump and an administration directive for agencies to undertake job reductions. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was the only dissenting vote, accusing her colleagues of a demonstrated enthusiasm for greenlighting this president's legally dubious actions in an emergency posture. Yeah. Jackson warned of enormous real-world consequences. This executive action promises mass employee terminations. Yeah, you betcha. Widespread cancellation of federal programs and services. Okay, well, I'm sure the private sector can pick up. And the dismantling of much of the federal government as Congress has created it, she wrote. The high court action continued a remarkable winning streak for Trump, who the justices have allowed to move forward with significant parts of his plan to remake the federal government. The Supreme Court's intervention so far has been on the frequent emergency appeals the Justice Department has filed objecting to lower court rulings as improperly intruding on presidential authority. The Republican president has repeatedly said voters gave him a mandate for the work, and he tapped billionaire ally Elon Musk to lead the charge through Doge. Musk recently left his role. But the Doge is still there, just that Musk is no longer leading it. Today's U.S. Supreme Court ruling is another definitive victory for the president and his administration. It clearly rebukes the continued assaults on the president's constitutionally authorized executive powers by leftist judges who are trying to prevent the president from achieving government efficiency across the federal government. White House spokesperson Harrison Fields said in a statement, tens of thousands of federal workers have been fired, have left their jobs via deferred resignation programs, or have been placed on leave. There is no official figure for the job cuts, but at least 75,000 federal employees took deferred resignation, and thousands of probationary workers have already been let go. In May, U.S. District Judge Susan Ilston found that Trump's administration needs congressional approval to make sizable reductions to the federal workforce. By a 2-to-1 vote, a panel of the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals refused to block Ilston's order, finding that the downsizing could have broader effects, including on the nation's food safety system and health care for veterans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to allow him to make those cuts. We'll see what happens. So I guess, is that still going to? So labor unions and nonprofits that sued over the downsizing offered the justices several examples. This decision does not change the simple and clear fact that reorganization, okay, among agencies affected by the order are the Departments of Agriculture, Energy, etc. The case now continues in Ilston's court. So what did the Supreme Court do? They allowed lower court orders that temporarily froze. Okay, so they overrode the temporary freezing of the cuts. Okay, but the sort of the longer process is continuing still. I see. Just the temporary freezing of the cuts that is now no longer in effect. And so you can go ahead and start firing people, a lot of people. And we'll see how that works out. I'm sure that, Trump's pattern has been that he'll do something, and then when he starts to see the consequences, then he'll say, oh, well, I didn't mean to do that, and he'll start pulling back. So we'll see what actually happens with this thing. All right, let's look at some of the things on the Epoch Times. How Beijing evades tariffs and how the U.S. is fighting it. Okay. Okay. Beijing events. Okay, and then U.S. sanctions UN expert for pushing ICC case against Israel. So there's this sort of a battle of the ideologies going on between Trump and the rest of the world, basically, especially between Trump and Europe. Trump threatens Brazil with 50% tariffs, citing trial of former president. Yeah, so President Trump is supporting Jair Bolsonaro, the former conservative president. The current president of Brazil is a pro-China, leftist, strong leftist. And so President Trump is using tariffs for a political purpose to, well, kind of to intervene in the domestic political affairs of another country, which is interesting. Of course, I agree. I also would like to support Jair Bolsonaro myself, but this is an interesting use of tariffs. So what's Brazil supposed to do? Are they okay, well, we won't be persecuting Bolsonaro anymore. That's a little bit, yeah, this is interesting, a little bit interesting. Yeah. Okay. And Shen Yun, Epoch Times is published by the Falun Gong, and Shen Yun is also a group that is sponsored by Falun Gong, and so they carry stories about the Falun Gong, about Shen Yun from time to time. I have not seen this dance performance, but apparently it's quite something. This photograph. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything, but okay. Well, let's let it pass. Okay. Unraveling the CCP's playbook for transnational repression in America. Yeah. So basically, Chinese dissidents who are in America being suppressed here in America. Beijing weaponized rare earths. How the West is responding. Okay. And okay. China reports worst producer deflation in 2 years amid ongoing trade uncertainty. Yes, so China seems to be going into kind of a deflationary spiral. And although I believe that, eventually in the ideal world, we will have a deflationary economy, meaning that prices are always getting cheaper. And deflation is the natural consequence of a free market, right? Because as production becomes more efficient, right? As the production becomes more efficient, price should be going down. And in fact, it is. Compare, for example, computers. If you think back 50 years, how much did a computer cost? Well, it cost like a gazillion dollars. And you had to be like a university or some institution like that with a big endowment to be able to afford a single computer. And today, everybody's got a computer. We got several computers. So the cost of computers has gone down astronomically over the last 50 years. And that is what's supposed to happen with technological advancement, with the greater efficiency of production, with competition, with free market competition. Prices are supposed to always be going down. And that's why I think that in the ideal world, where government is not supposed to go into debt, except in times of a war or national emergency, according to the Chinese Constitution, we will be in a deflationary economy. That means that our money will continually grow in value instead of right now being debased in value, right? In value. So I think that's coming in the ideal world. But in the meantime, when you have governments that are deeply indebted, for them, deflation is a terrible, terrible thing. Because they say, well, it reduces the size of the economy, and also it makes the debt that they have much more difficult to repay. So here, China reports worst producer deflation in 2 years amid ongoing trade uncertainty. Analysts say they expect more subdued domestic demand and trade tensions with the United States. So let's see what's going on here. China's factory gate prices in June saw the biggest fall in 2 years amid uncertainty in international trade and weak domestic demand. According to figures released on Wednesday by China's National Bureau of Statistics, and yes, weak domestic demand because people are saying, well, wait a second, why should we buy this stuff today when next month or next year it may be cheaper than it is today? Our money may be worth more next year than it is today. So let's wait. According to figures released on Wednesday by China's National Bureau of Statistics, which, okay, we've said many things about statistics coming out of China. But anyway, people still look at it, so let's look at it too. The producer price index for industrial products in June fell 3.6% compared to the same month last year. worse than a 3.3% drop in May, and the biggest annual decline since July 2023. The month's PPI for industrial products fell 4.3% year on year, bigger than the 3.0. Okay. According to NBS statistician Dong Lijuan, the PPI deflation in June was driven by hot and wet weather that drove down the price of building materials, cheaper energy prices, and uncertainties in international trade. How does hot and wet weather drive down the price of building materials? I guess that there's less building going on, and so the inventory of building materials is growing, and so that's why the price is down. Maybe, I don't know. They need to explain that somehow. Sectors that rely on exports faced more downward pressure in prices, she said. Yeah, because they've got inventory stacking up, not going overseas. The prices of computers, communication equipment, and other electronic equipment in June dropped by 0.4% compared to May. The prices of electrical machinery and equipment fell by 0.2%, and textile prices fell by 0.2%. In annual terms, the prices of computers, communication equipment, and other electronic equipment fell by 2.3%. China's factory activity shrank for a third month in a row in June, albeit at a slower pace, with employment and new export orders still languishing. We expect the demand to weaken later this year as exports slow and the boost from physical support diminishes. Boost from physical support, in other words, the government, this refers to the government creating money to hand out to companies so that they don't go bankrupt. Market reaction to the data was cautious. Yeah, because they don't believe it. They know it's a lie. But amid uncertainties in the trade war between the United States and other economies, China's Shanghai Composite Index was up 0.3%. All right, so a subdued domestic demand remains a drag on China's economy. Subdued domestic demand, that's one way of putting it. But people don't want to buy stuff now. It'll be cheaper later on. Companies have resorted to price discounts to boost sales, prompting the authorities to urge an end to the auto industry's bruising price wars. See that? See that? They don't want deflation to be coming on around. So they're telling companies, don't cut your prices. Don't cut your prices. Yeah. That's the communist country for you. Highlighting the tepid consumer market, Chinese e-commerce giants Alibaba and JD.com have pledged heavy subsidies over recent months to expand aggressively into fast deliveries. Consumer prices rose by 0.1%. So that was, until now, we've been talking about producer prices, and consumer prices, meanwhile, rose by 0.1% compared to the same month last year, following 4 months of deflation. So they finally got the consumer prices to go above zero. We'll see what happens, right? Consumer inflation is likely to remain near zero for the rest of the year as structural adjustments continues slowly, with consumer demand weighed by the protracted property downturn and worries over the job market. So China's economy is a very, very precarious situation. And, all these stories that are coming out about Xi Jinping stepping down and so forth, they may be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but we'll have to wait and see. I guess the theory, that is being put forward now without attribution, without really good sourcing, is that he may be stepping down in September or October. But as I said, I think these are propaganda stories being put out by someone. They could become self-fulfilling prophecies. We'll have to see. All right. Well, anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for joining me back on this news schedule, and we'll be continuing now for, well, I guess the rest of eternity, I guess, at this 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern schedule. So please join us 6 days a week, and I will see you again tomorrow. God bless, Godspeed.